Alo, alo. mà sụt say không sọt bài không cho ra
បាទបងសុខសប្បាយបងចន្ទាមានតែលើចន្ទាមាន2ណាបង
ដឹងហើយចន្ទាមាន2ដែរដឹងដែរបាត់ថ្ងៃច្រើនគេដែរបងចន្ទានៅខាងលើខ្ញុំជួបសឹងតែរាល់តែថ្ងៃទៅហើយពេលថ្ងៃអត់ដែរឃើញសោះ
ជំរាបសួរលោកធានហើយបាទសកាកម្មទាំងអស់ដែលបានចូលរួមវគ្គនេះបាទ
ជំរាបសួរបងចន្ទា
បាទជំរាបសួរសុខសប្បាយ
ខានជួបបងយូរ
បាទ
វគ្គរបស់យើងចាប់ផ្ដើមម៉ោង 9 ទេបង
បាទម៉ោង 9 ណាថ្ងៃនេះយើងសម្ដែងសម្ដាមនេះបន្តិចមុននឹងយើងចាប់ផ្ដើមនិយាយបន្តិចហើយយើងចាប់ផ្ដើមបងប្អូនគ្នា
បាទបង
យើងមានអ្នកបកប្រែទៀតមិនអីទេថ្ងៃនេះអ្នកបកប្រែនៅម្ដុំណាចេះយើងប្រើក្នុង setting ណា
គាត់គ្រូនៅ ISI
អត់ទេបណ្ដៃចង់និយាយនៅ Zoom យើងប្រើក្នុង setting ណាយើងប្រើនៅកន្លែងណាដើម្បីដឹងបកប្រែ
នៅខាងក្រោមមានខាងក្រោមបាហ្នឹងមាន icon មួយរូបផែនដីពេល click តែសារឥឡូវគាត់អត់ទាន់ចូលដល់ពេលគាត់អត់ទាន់ចូល
អូខេបាយទេចឹង
គាត់ចូលហើយបងជំរាបសួរលោកធានមកគាត់បានចូលរួមហើយលោកធាន
បាទជំរាបសួរលោកធាន
បាទជំរាបសួរបងគឺតាសុខសប្បាយ
កូវីដក៏បានអត់មានអីទេសុខសប្បាយអត់មានទេយើង
អត់អីទេបងអត់អីទេ
បាត់ភាព
តា
បាទបងចិនដា
បាទបង
ហើយការដល់បងចិនដា
ដូចចិនដាមាន2បងណា Để sắp sửa anh thấy
không phải không bạn chờ nghe đấy việc gì
mình tràn của má này chiêng rồi nè mà tới
vậy lôi đó đỡ quá đấy mà nó lấy chiên
lịch prap của man trong hôn nữa lịch
do trôi lên
còn lịch prap còn ngoài ban một đồng phải nè thì chăm mà tung cho làm prap còn thì lịch còn prap mê quá bạn đây nghe bàn
đây con nhà ná đây con nhà ná
ba Việt du
nhôm chân ta đây
chẳng đá khang realestate.com
không sắp bài thôi bằng
Good evening, you see, how are you?
Hi, good morning, good evening. How are you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for your coming to join with our Cambodian people. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm, you know, always support you, you know, try to
okay.
support.
Yeah. Yeah, we have our old friend, Mr. Jenda, myself, and a lot of newcomers who want to learn ABR. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. Yeah,
yeah.
It's very good, very good, very good.
Yeah. And we expected register is more than 100 people.
Okay.
I think 120 something. 120 something. And
really?
Then, yeah. And then let's see how they are interested to be the member or something. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you? Did you travel so far for this moment? You see?
Yes, yeah. The United States is, you know, almost fully open.
Oh,
so
okay.
I just come back from Bahama for a conference, and I'm going to Dubai from tomorrow.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So trade mission to Dubai.
To Dubai.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are coming back like slowly, you know. They're almost fully open.
Okay. Invite for trade mission to Cambodia. I will host you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We can do something. Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I host you. Okay. Just let me know what requirement, what project that you look like, and then we fully support you. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Remember like 3 years ago, our Arena.
Yeah, Arena.
In the Sofitel Hotel, like, you know, you guys hosted beautiful events.
Yeah.
I want to go back there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
We think by the end of this year we will do the more physical events. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we could do more physical event. Yeah. Two more big event. We'll invite you.
Yep. Thank you. That'll be nice. I thought Mark is here.
Mark's coming.
Yeah, he's here. Okay.
Chuẩn bị sưu tiên thì sao ta គេស៊ីយកគាត់ចូលលេងម៉ាកដល់អញ្ចឹងទៅម៉ាកគាត់ចូលរួមអត់បានទេដោយសារយើងមានលេងមួយទៀតសម្រាប់គាត់ណាលោកធានដល់ស្រាទៅបាន
ទៅជាម៉ាកទេ
បាទដោយសារគាត់ចូលលេងម៉ាកដល់អញ្ចឹងទៅម៉ាកគាត់ចូលលេងអត់បានទេដោយសារលេងហ្នឹងបានតែមួយ device អញ្ចឹងចង់ទៅឲ្យគាត់ដោយសារខ្ញុំផ្សាយលេងមួយទៀតជូនគាត់ណា
អូអញ្ចឹងគាត់ចូលលេងរបស់ម៉ាក
ស៊ីយកហ្នឹងយើងមានលេងមួយទៀតសម្រាប់ជូនគាត់ប៉ុន្តែឥឡូវហ្នឹងគាត់កំពុងចូលលេងម៉ាក
អូខេ
អញ្ចឹងម៉ាកគាត់ចូលលេងអត់បានទេអញ្ចឹង
ផ្ញើខ្ញុំឲ្យគាត់ចេញតិច
យកម៉ាកក៏យកសូវយក
ឥឡូវម៉ាកគាត់ចូលអត់រួចត្រូវពូម៉ាកអាហ្នឹងទៅឲ្យយ៉ាស៊ីគាត់ចេញតិច
បាទ
អញ្ចឹងមាន link នឹងសម្រាប់គាត់
មានទៀត
ខ្ញុំផ្ញើមកចាំផ្ញើឲ្យម៉ាកចូលរួចហ៎
បាទតែគាត់ចូលលេងហ្នឹងទៅម៉ាកគាត់ចូលរួច
ហើយដែរចេះ
លេងខ្ញុំផ្សាយជូនលោកធានខាងក្រោមសម្រាប់យូស៊ីតាហ្គីតា
Hello Yosi
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Sorry, Yosi, just a bit technical because you attend the link of Mr. Mark. So I would like you to leave out and then I send you by messenger now and then you can come again. Because
my
it's
God.
for the whole event. Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Okay,
Let me.
Có trụ bán này.
Ok, Mark cho bán này.
Good morning, Mark.
I need to be able to share screen. So if some the host could release me to be able to share screen, please. Thank you.
Bà con muốn cặp này.
We'll be with you in a few, and as soon as we could share screen, then we will be able to start. Thank you.
បងចាប់ដើម
Yes, good morning, Mr. Mark, trainer from NEA, from NAO. But ដោយសារម៉ោងនេះគឺដល់ចាប់ផ្ដើមវគ្គបាទ Accredited buyer representative ចឹងខ្ញុំសូមគោរពជម្រាបបាទសួរលោកប្រធានសមាគមហើយនិងសិក្ខាកាមទាំងអស់ដែលបានចូលរួមនៅក្នុងវគ្គនេះហើយតាក់ទងនឹងវគ្គនេះគឺខ្ញុំចង់បាទជម្រាបជូនសិក្ខាកាមទាំងអស់ក៏ដូចជាលោកប្រធានសមាគមតាក់ទងទៅនឹងវគ្គ training កន្លងមកគឺក្រោមការដឹកនាំរបស់ប្រធានសមាគមលោកជ្រឹកសង្នីមគឺបាននាំយកជំនាញអន្តរជំនាញអាចារ្យវត្ថុអន្តរជាតិគឺយើងមានកន្លងមកគឺមាន CIPS បាទ COS ហើយនឹងឥឡូវយើងមានមួយទៀតបាទ CBR អញ្ចឹងមាន3ដែលតាក់ទងនឹងជំនាញអន្តរជាតិដើម្បីលើកកម្ពស់សមត្ថភាពនៅក្នុងស្រុកហើយទន្ទឹមនេះដែរគឺយើងមានជំនាញនៅក្នុងស្រុក3ដែរបាទមាន professional real estate agent ហើយ professional real estate valuation ហើយនិង property management ដែលសរុបទៅគឺខ្ញុំលើកត្រួសគឺតាក់ទងទៅនឹងក្រៅស្រុកគឺយើងសរុបទាំងអស់គឺបើ CIPS គឺយើងបានថ្ងៃនេះចុះឈ្មោះថ្ងៃនេះគឺបាន129បាទវគ្គមុនបាន104ហើយនឹងវគ្គដំបូងបំផុតបាន68បាទអញ្ចឹងសរុបទៅជិត300នាក់គឺវគ្គ CIPS ហើយ COS គឺយើងបាន55នាក់បាទហើយ Accredited buyer គឺបាន129បាទរហូតមកដល់ពេលនេះបាទសរុបទាំងអស់គឺ129តាក់ទងទៅនឹងជំនាញភ្នាក់ងារអាចារ្យវត្ថុក្នុងស្រុកគឺសរុបរហូតមកដល់ថ្ងៃនេះគឺយើងបាន1650បាទ1650ដែលភ្នាក់ងារគឺយើងដល់ចំនួនទី8 valuation ដល់ចំនួនទី4ហើយនឹងproperty management ដល់ចំនួនទី2បាទអញ្ចឹងបន្ទាប់ពីនេះគឺយើងមានវគ្គបន្តទៀតគឺប្រហែលជាអាចចូលទៅដល់បញ្ញាបត្ររងបាទអាចថាឆ្នាំហ្នឹងឬក៏ឆ្នាំក្រោយអញ្ចឹងខ្ញុំមានប៉ុណ្ណឹងមានការណែនាំប៉ុណ្ណឹងបន្ទាប់ពីហ្នឹងខ្ញុំសូមគោរពបាទលោកប្រធានសមាគមបាទចាប់ផ្ដើមបើកវគ្គបាទ
ជាបឋមសូមអរគុណបងចិន្តាហើយ special thanks to Mark that you spend your time to train. I think it is over midnight in USA, and thank for your time that always support to Cambodia. During this time, we have a lot of people to come to attend for ABR because people are very interested to learn more from you, and I get a lot of good feedback from last course about CIPS that you have been trained so far, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. Instead of the president of CVEA and ASEAN president, and also for Cambodia, it is a very good time for Cambodia to improve our knowledge to be another level of doing the real estate for international. I think this is the good time for learning from you and from the USA that have been success for many courses so far. And this time we have 129 people will attend this course. So I think very good experience, and then we will learn from their part from you, and hope that this course will become to be great. And then we will try to bring more course to Cambodia with the representative from NAO. This special thanks to NAO also, and UC, and yourself, and the other representative from Cambodia so far that always support to Cambodia. We could make it happen. I think after that, maybe on June or July, we will look for another one more course to train like this, and then we will let you and UC to know more. I think now is not to interrupt more time from you, so I would like to officially open this course and then provide the time to Mark, and then thank you for your time and thank you again. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And this morning, we have a special guest. We have Yoshi Takita from New York. It's late over there. It's a 10 p.m. in his time, and it's a 7 p.m. I'm here in West Coast in Seattle. So Yoshi is this year, he's the new global ambassador from NAR to Cambodia. So I'm going to go give a few minutes to him to say hello. And I know he's traveling soon to Dubai. I'm going to give him, he joined us this morning here. So I'm going to turn my time over to Yoshi for a little bit. Go ahead, Yoshi.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. My Realtor friend in Cambodia, and welcome to your first ABR designation course hosted in Cambodia. And I'm honored to be here at the historical moment, and I just want to congratulate you. Again, my name is Yoshi, and I met some of you in NAR conference throughout the past, and also I was at the Arena conference in 2018 at the Sofitel Hotel in Phnom Penh. So I probably I recognize some of your faces. I originally from Japan and live and work in New York City, USA. Practice real estate just like yourself. And I was, as Mike say, appointed to be a global ambassador for 2020 for Cambodia. And I'm covering Indonesia and Vietnam as well. And this is my first year working with you and your associations. And I'm also a 2022 NAR chair of a CIPS advisory board, which is Certified International Property Specialist. And I know some of you are also designated as CIPS. And this is the designation for people who practice real estate globally, working with the CIPS member with over 75 countries worldwide. Well, if you have any question, concern, comments, or suggestion regarding NAR membership, education program, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, today, please enjoy your ABR course. I believe in education, and education can change your life. A lot of good luck to you, and good luck for your success for your career. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoshi, and have a safe trip to Dubai. And we'll see you sometime somewhere, maybe Zoom. And I know that most of you, maybe Yoshi be able to join us later this week. We have some of you be joining us on Asia Network as well. So,
yes,
all right.
I'll be there. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Yoshi. Okay, then let's start the class. This is an ABR class. And some of you remember that I did teach you the CIPS class last year. And this is one more thing. ABR class is mainly to work with the buyer. It's called Accredited Buyer's Representative. This is also another designation class, course only for realtors and our international realtor members. And I thought this is one of the good class because you don't have to, CIPS talks about the international part of our business. And, if you're not into international part of the business, it might not make too much difference. But this ABR class is going to help you to learn how to work with a buyer. And this is almost a universal what buyer wants to work with. And there are some differences, with the United States and so forth, but I think there's many things that you could learn from this class that be able to apply to your business today, even what are things that you learn today, because, most of the buyers, like I say, whether it's in Cambodia, USA, Japan, or everywhere, a lot of the buyer wants the same thing. And to work with a buyer, you need to understand how to deal with a buyer. But why is that important? Because buyer always become a seller. If you keep in touch, It's all going to circle. So starting with a buyer would be good. And I know because how we list property and how we sell property in Cambodia is different than the United States, but a lot of the buyer stuff would be very similar. So this course objective is to understand and demonstrate your values to today's buyer. Acquire the skills and resources to succeed as a buyer's representative in a dynamic real estate market. Help buyers find the right property at the right terms and price in both buyers and sellers market. And I am not sure how the Cambodia market is. In the United States right now, it is a seller's market. What does a seller's market mean? Seller's market means there's more buyers than the house is. Our inventory level is very low. In United States, inventory level is about 2 months inventory in the market, in the residential market. And usually the balanced market is considered to be 4 to 6 months is a balanced market. So it's a very, very much seller's market. And even my market here in Seattle, actually it's even lower. I am right now about 0.3 months. So what does that mean? I only have an inventory for about 10 days. So understanding how to work with a buyer in the seller's market is very important because you have to work with a buyer a lot, and you have to be very tough to find the right house for them. So hopefully we are able to learn a little bit, but understanding what buyer wants and standing on the buyer side is going to help you throughout. Let me see. Sorry about that. So these are the 6 modules we're going to learn, and this today and tomorrow, and also next week, same time, Monday and Tuesday. So today we're going to try to cover about module 1 or 1 and maybe into 2 as well, but that's okay. We will definitely cover all the modules that we need to cover. So we'll stay together as well. So what needs to be done for international members to become an ABR designee? Of course, you just have to take a ABR class that you have, 2-day course, which you're taking right now. And membership, and you have to have a membership in good standing as a part of the Bilateral Partner Association, which most of you are, and also to be as an international realtor members. There is going to be $185 US, a little bit high, to get the ABR designation originally with application. And after that, you just have to maintain the IRM member, International Realtor member, which is $75 each year to remain members. And for international member, it is actually pretty good. Long as you maintain pay the $75, you could have ABR, and if you take in CIPS, that's all you have to pay for international member. I wish we could do that, because in the United States, I pay different fee for CIPS, ABR, and et cetera, and I have about 12 different designations and certifications. So I pay a lot of money each year to keep everything up. But for international members, you only have to pay $75 only. And we'll go over this at the end again, but just remember that. And I think the last time your association worked with you to send the application in as well. And there's no other things that you have to do. You take the 2-day class and you turn it in, the application, and pay your fee, and you could become a member. In the United States, to get ABR, you have to take the ABR class, a 2-day class, and you have to take a class for 1 more day in the United States. So what are some of the ABR or REBAC members benefit? Some of the benefits are Facebook networking group, we have our own, and networking referral with a 35,000 ABR designee, and and customized marketing materials, tools for working with a buyer, and publication and other resources. Somebody's playing with, let me see. Somebody's sharing the desktop. Please stop sharing the desktop, please. Okay, thank you. All right. I want to make sure you're still able to see. Let me redo this. All right, everybody should be okay. So network, now you got networking group, referrals, customized marketing materials. You could use ABR, working with a buyer, tools for working with a buyer, publication and other resources that you could use with ABR. And I will share that with you at the end of the session next week. Any questions so far? Everybody's good? Let's start. And you can always stop me with a question. Don't use a chat. Just say, hey, Mark, I have a question or something. Then I'll be able to help you. Okay? And we'll do as much as we can. So first place is the value and the role of the buyer representative. That is our first module. And if you want to turn your book, now we're going to be using the book quite a lot. And on the bottom, and we will be on the bottom of the page, you will have what page that we're on the book. You see that on the page 11. So we'll be starting from the page 11 on the ABR. So that's the module 1. So these are the learning objectives for module 1. Define your value proposition as a buyer's representative by learning what is important to the buyer. What is most important to the buyer? Recognize how buyer and agent relationship is legally formed. And it's a little bit different, but you study a little bit of a United States way, but maybe that is a good example for you to understand how it's formed. Understand your duties and responsibility as a buyer's representative. And let me ask a question maybe somebody could answer. In Cambodia, does most of the transaction you represent both the buyer and the seller? One real estate agent represents both buyer and the seller. Is that very common in Cambodia? Anybody could help me answer that question? Just unmute and speak. Anybody? I think most of the Asian countries is very familiar that buyer and you represent both the seller and the buyer. But in United States, most of the transaction is done with a separate people representing something separate. So in United States, usually those are considered called dual agent when you're representing both parties. But in United States, usually there's going to be an agent representing the seller and agent representing the buyer. It's very, some states in United States, some states, they do not allow you to represent both parties. But it's not that common in the United States that you represent both parties. In my career, I've been in Realtor for I'm going on to 22 years. Only time I represented both sides is only 3 times in 22 years. I either represent the seller or I even represented the buyer. So what do you do in the case when you're representing the seller and your buyer client wants to buy the house that you represent? What I usually do is I refer that client to the buyer for that buyer to my teammate, and teammates take care of the buyer. So in the United States, very common The seller has their own real estate agent and the buyer has their own real estate agent. So you'll understand the responsibility as a buyer representative.
Yes.
Question?
No
Everybody's
question.
okay?
Answer your question.
Yeah, you answered the question. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think in Cambodia too, my understanding from last time I was teaching classes, most of you represent both sides, both the buyer and the seller at the same time. All right. So continuing on page 11. Today's home buyers have lots of options. It's your responsibility to demonstrate your value. And the value of the buyer, being just representing a buyer, is very important because you are concentrating your effort as a real estate agent to the one party. So two key factors are, who are you to your client? Are you a good advisor, or are you just an agent that represents the seller and the buyer? And what is your client as a buyer is needing from you? And if you go into page 12, it talks about what does being buyer's advocate means. Advocate means, the word advocate means that you are on your buyer's side, and buyer's side only. And your job is to find your client the right home at the best price and terms. And also serve as a trusted guide through the process. And protects clients' interest. You're not revealing any secrets or some of the discussion that you have with us, with that. And that's the hard when you representing both sides is that, you know, both sides will tell you something that you don't want other party to know because they trust you as an advisor. But when you're on the both representing both sides, it's very tough to keep a secret from each other. That's me basically safeguard the confidential information. So when it comes to it, what does buyer value the most? What are they seeking from you? You're the expert they are seeking. Of course, they're seeking for service from you. And sometimes information just depends on, like the United States, buyers are able to get almost all the house information through internet now. And almost close to 95% of the buyers goes to the internet first before they come to talk to the real estate agent. Because we have MLS in the United States, so all the information shared with everybody. So it's a little bit different in Cambodia and other places where there's no MLS. So there's not, you know, you might have to go to your website and you might have to go to somebody else's website in order to get all the information. But main part is they are looking for your guidance. They are looking to see how you could guide them. And from the NARs, this is in the United States, but it's almost same as everywhere else in the world. What buyer wants most from the agents? Of course, the biggest thing is help find the right homes to purchase, to buy. And also help them to negotiate the terms of the sale. They want you to help you negotiate the best deal you could get. And that becomes hard when you're representing both sides, right? Who are you negotiating on behalf? Is it buyer or the seller? And help with the price negotiation, right? Not just a term, but it's a price. And of course, big part is helping with them with the paperwork. And so you'd be able to explain the paperwork to your client. determine what comparable homes selling for. When you determine the offer price, they're going to ask you, Mark, is this the right price to pay for this home? Are you sure we're not paying too much? You need to help them advise that as an advisor by knowing the market and the market condition. Another thing is help determining how much buyer can afford. You might be helping buyer to give it to a mortgage company or lender, and sometimes you might be the mortgage company as well to help them how much money they need to get a loan. They're going to help you on the loan. Help find the arranged financing. That's the loan part. Or help learn buyer more about neighborhoods. The biggest things buyers looking for to help is 51. But that's becoming a very easier and easier because of the advancement of internet. Sometimes buyer knows more than the house by you. In a lot of cases in the United States is like that. So giving them advice through transaction has become one of the largest part of the buyer agent's job or any agent's job right now. Even we're talking about buyer, but talking a little bit on the seller. Like I told you that we only have about 10 days worth of inventory. So right now in my market, if you have an average priced house, most likely you'll sell within 2 to 3 days, if it's not sooner. So you put it on the market and the house will be gone in 2 to 3 days. And you get multiple offers. You get 3 or 4 people making offer. It's a little bit better than last year. Last year we used to get like 10 offers, but now we only get about 5 to 6. But in the United States, buying time, now we're getting to the spring. As you know, yesterday or today for you is the first day of a spring. And now spring season pickup, but because in United States, people move during summertime because new school year starts in September in United States and school finishes in June. So people move in the summertime to the new location and so forth. But anyway, so buyer's market picks up again. So most important factors in choosing an agent is 3 things. How do they choose? Honesty. You're an honest person that you can trust to, trustworthy person. And of course, your experience. Experience could be covered. Experience and reputation could be covered by working with a franchise company. Some of you might be Century 21, Remax, or other company, or more, very reputable company in your area. That could be covered. But honesty is something that you have to cover yourself. Who you are representing, are you being very honest? And so forth. These are the 3 key things that buyers looking for. And next part is we're kind of looking at how buyers search for homes. You see it here. And this is a little bit older. Overall, how far look online for properties for sale, 43%. Contacts real estate agents. And this percentage might be a little bit different, depends on which country it is. In the United States, they go online first, but for searching for house, almost by 88, like I said, close to 93% of people go online first. And it says, look online for information about the home buying process. Contacted a bank or mortgage lender first, 7%. How they start. Talk with the friends of relatives about home buying process. Drove by a home site, neighborhood, and found the house. Visiting open house, and you have others. So these are how the buyer searching for homes right now. So internet, of course, is one of the biggest way that people search now for houses. And I think that's beginning to happen to most of the countries as well. When you move into verse 14, in United States, even with the internet, still in 2020, 88% of the buyers still use their own agent, hire their own agent. Seems like because of the internet, the number is going to go down. Actually, the numbers keep going up. More people are asking agent help. Why? There's so much information out there that you need somebody to help them guide and tell them what is a true information or not. So that it is is definitely increasing on how it's used. How do buyers find agent? Most home buyers find their agent through personal referrals. That's why marketing to your market base and your referral base becomes very important. That should be part of your marketing, is things that's not finished. As soon as you sell something to them, you keep in touch with them and keep in good contact with them. They're the one that's give you more business. So I've been in real estate business for, like I said, about over 20 years. I'm on a 22nd year. And right now I could truly say about 90% of my business is coming either from past client or referral from my past clients and the agents. 90%. Only about 10% of my business is coming from internet, website, or anything. Your friend, neighbors, and relatives are very, very important. They're the ones that's going to say, hey, Mark is a good agent to work with. But use agent service previously. You used Mark before, so you like it. But just remember, a lot of people don't buy houses every year, every 2 years. So you need to keep in touch with them so that they can remember your name and they know that you're still doing real estate, and they remember that to contact you if there's any real estate question. And other times, in the United States, meet agent open house. This is one of the ways to pick up a new client. And I try to do about one open house a month. Of course, during the COVID, I wasn't able to do it, but I'm beginning to start in the United States. COVID is going away, so we don't even have to wear a mask anymore and so forth. It's changed. So we start seeing a lot of open houses now. And a lot of the newer, a lot of the buyer now, before they talk to the agent, they see an open house on internet and they go internet. They go to the open house through internet information, and they might not even working with an agent yet. So every year, I usually pick up 2 to 3 buyer or seller through open house. I think open house is one of the best tools you have to meet new client or find new client. And refer by another real estate professionals. Every year, I have a minimum of about 5, mostly sometimes closer to 10 transactions that's referred by the other real estate professionals. What does that real estate professional mean? Sometimes the agent from other parts of the country or other parts of the world, or even some lender, inspector, has referred me a client as well. So it is always good to keep in contact and in good relationship with all the people who works in as a team to complete the real estate transaction. What does it mean for you? We talked a little bit about it. Right? You are your business. And depends on what it is. Sometimes you might be I don't know whether most of you in Cambodia are agents and have a contract with your office, or your employee of the office. It might be a little bit different. But if you're an agent and you own your own business, you are your business. So every personal interactions and relationship matters. With your clients, other agents, community residents, local business, those are all source of your business. So you have to be in good contact with everybody that's who's around. So what is your unique proposition? In other words, what is unique about you? Right now, you're taking ABR class, so specialized training. Once you decide to have an ABR designation after you take an ABR class, you could use that as a part of a marketing. I took a special course and I have a designation as ABR, Accredited Buyer's Representative. Your expertise, market knowledge, and your skill. Experience. Experience not necessarily come just from the real estate experience, experience that you might get from previous business that you had. Before I was a real estate agent, this is the longest career that I have now. Before I became a real estate agent, you know, in almost close to about 8, almost close to 10 years, I was working in an import-export company in United States, in Japan, and also for corporate travel agencies. So those become very, very important. There are a lot of things, skills that I learned from those businesses as well. So what makes you distinct? Distinct means different. When there's many, many agents that they could go to, why should they come to you? What represents your personal style? Your personal style might be different. You might be very laid back, or you might be very articulate. It could be different, but different people attract different people. You do not have to be one way to be able to be successful in this business. And what do you offer to your buyer? What's the value that you are offering? The buyer is going to be attracted to you. In order to figure all these out, one thing that you have to remember is this, right? Know your competition. Knowing your own value is the best way to get value for your clients. And knowing your value includes knowing your competition. You need to know what other people are doing. You have to be different than other people, or you have to be better than other people. And we'll talk about the SWOT analysis later on module 6, when we talk about a little bit about understanding who your competitions are. We'll do that a little bit later. SWOT stands for, stands for strength. W stands for weaknesses, your strength, your weaknesses, your opportunities is O, and T, your threats. What is threatening your business? What opportunities do you have in your business? Those are the things that it's important as well. So you see it on page 17. This is one of the sheets. Once you get it, you're going to be able to download this, and you could use this as your marketing tools. Of course, it's in English, so you could translate it into maybe Cambodian. And once you get an ABR, you have authorization to do that. Say, why work with an accredited buyer's representative? This could become one of your new marketing tool and so forth. So let's look at an exercise on page 18 a little bit. When you look at it here, looking through buyer's eye. So if you're the buyer, these are some of the things that's very important on, this is on the page 18 of your book. Is it buyer's market or seller's market? It's very important, right? When it's a seller's market, it's very competitive for the buyer. If it's a buyer's market, that means that you have more houses than the buyers out there. So you'll be able to negotiate a lot more with the seller. Basically, it's a demand high or low. What home features are popular? Of course, each buyer has their own needs and wants. But, a lot of people like to see what's popular in this market right now. What's popular in this market? Best way to look at it is go find new construction and see what kind of things, amenities and appliances and things like that is going into the house, and the color as well. What concerns are people having about the home buying process? What is the concern? What do they worry about when they're buying a home? Find out what websites or applications on their phone they use or they visited. When you buy a broker, you have to stand on the buyer. So just think about it, and I want to give you a few minutes to write down. If you become a buyer, if you're a buyer, what are some of the things that's concern or you want to consider as a buyer? So let's write that down on the page 8 if you have the booklet printed out, or just write it down on paper. If you're the buyer, what is some of the things that's important to you to understand before you start a buying process? So some example was there, right? I'm going to give you just a few minutes to just write it down on a piece of paper. Because if you are going to work as a buyer broker, one thing is you have to think like a buyer. Thinking like a buyer and thinking like a seller is a little bit different. All right, let's move a little bit forward. Thank you very much. So look at it, how the buyer-agent relationship is formed. Under this column, strong relationships are built on the strong first impression. Build trust throughout the process for a productive working relationship. Remember, they're coming to you as a professional, so you have to act like a professional and you have to look like a professional. Knowing the legal aspect, all the paperwork, it's all different in each country, sometimes maybe each area. Knowing the legal aspect of the relationship is crucial. That's the legal aspect, meaning the relationship between you and your client. And depends on what kind of law you have on an agency. So you have to understand the relationship legally with as a buyer agent and or the seller's agent, but especially now we're talking about buyer's agent. So when it comes to you first meeting are most important. First meeting sets the tone for the buyer agent and relationship. Before you think about it, let's say when you go to a store and somebody from the store comes up to you and say, may I help you? How long does it take for you to make a decision whether you like that person or not? How long? Anybody? Anybody could just shout out. How long does it take you? When you go to the store and person from the store says, can I help you? How long does it take for you to make a decision whether you like that person or not? Very quickly, right? And statistics show that it takes about 15 seconds for us to make a determination on that person that you meet first time, whether you like that person or not. So the first impression is very important. So what's important? Number one, to dress appropriately. If you want to be treated as like a professional, you have to dress like a professional. Of course, depends on what kind of clientele you deal with or where you're working at. It might be different. If you're working at some of the resort area, you might not be more casual, but wearing a suit and things like that, suit and tie, that could be very important. So think about it, your dress code. And also a lot of times, in the United States, we talk about our cars. You don't have to drive an expensive car, but make sure you drive a clean car. Because United States, usually you meet clients at the office or even you meet clients at the house and you drive up in dirty car, that's a no-no as well. And the first meeting is, continue on, opportunity to start learning about the buyer, their situation, and length of search, home buying goals. You get to start knowing the buyer. You're going to get to know the buyer as more and more that you go through, and we'll go through some of the process a little bit later. And the first meeting is an opportunity to share your value and service. What you bring to the table, what you bring as a buyer's agent. Present your unique value proposition. Use a first meeting to share your unique value proposition. We talk about that, right? Help your buyers form a positive impression about your person. So they be prepared. So you have to be prepared, be professional, and be yourself. Because you have your own style. Try not to do style that's not you. Because that looks like fake. And as we go, we will share with you some of the things that I do as well. And it's in English, but I will share on the chat room and so forth, probably tomorrow, or some of the things that I use for presentation. So how do you turn your buyer into a client? In United States, we have a buyer representation agreement. And I think the buyer representation agreement is very important. I use it every single time. If I start working with a buyer, I have them buyer representation agreement signed so that I know that I'm working with them. But this is a mutual, meaning that they don't have to sign. If they don't sign buyer representation agreement, for me, is I do not work with them. So some of you are not muted, so please make sure you're muted. Okay. So we don't have to hear you. So by having a buyer's agreement officially turns a buyer into a client. And that means is the protects your financial and compensation interest. Having a buyer's agreement signed, I explain how the buyer agent gets paid. In the United States, most of the time, buyer agent is paid through the seller. Okay. So we all understand the buyer. I want to make sure the buyer understands how I get paid in the beginning. And having a buyer agency agreement protects you from potentially with the serious legal consequences later. Because if there's an argument or dispute, having an agent something signed is very important. Some of you have your hand up. Go ahead. Just unmute and ask a question. Go ahead. Anybody has a question? I see some hands up. Everybody's okay then? Okay, everybody's okay?
Okay.
Okay, all right. Common mistakes in buyer contract discussion. Even if there's no contract, you need to explain to them what the buyer agent does. Acting like a buyer representative without clarifying the relationship, especially when you're working with a both party. Sometimes, a lot of times in Cambodia, most likely you'll be working with the buyer and the seller. And that could be very need to understand who they represent. And avoiding discussion of contract to avoid pressuring the buyer. This is all listed on page 20 of your book. Rely on the state's default agency. This is in the United States. Each state in the United States, we have 50 states have a different law. And some of them are very similar, some of them are different. So our agency, we have to have a license in the United States. We have a law that we have to abide by and how we represent people. And don't assume the buyer knows that you are on their side. Because buyer always going to have a question and seller always going to have a question when you're representing both sides. Whose side are you with? Delaying signing buyer representation agreement until buyer is ready to make an offer. I have them sign it in the beginning. I don't wait till when they want to make an offer to have a buyer agency agreement. So that's how I deal with it. And not necessarily that that's the only way to do it, but that's the way that I do as well. What determines your relationship with the buyer's client? Your relationship with a buyer client is determined by sometimes state law, or maybe there's a country if you have an agency law. And for us, Realtor Code of Ethics makes a determination. And maybe you have your own, as your association, you have your own ethics that you have to abide by. And sometimes you have maybe an office policy or company policy. But remember, services buyer value most can be offered only in a buyer-agent relationship. either the buyer or the seller, mostly they want you to represent them 100%. So so when you do both sides, it's difficult to do that, but that's a common practice. But you need to really explain to them how your relationship is going to be with your buyer, of course, as well as the seller. And respecting exclusive agreements. If you use buyer agency agreement, then you need to understand maybe the buyer has already an agreement with somebody else, that you might have to step back and not work with them. You want to determine the right of way, so that way clarifying this early in the process will spare you and a buyer future problems or save time. If they're working with somebody else, then let them, so you don't get into legal problems. Our code of ethics on the chapter 16 says this. On NAR's code of ethics, standard practice 16-9, code of ethics number 16-9 says, realtors prior to entering into a representation agreement have an affirmative obligation to make a reasonable efforts to determine whether the prospect is subject to a current valid exclusive agreement to provide the same type of real estate service. You have to make an effort to make sure that there's no other exclusive agreement that they have with somebody else. So it's 8, I guess it'd be 10 o'clock right now. So let's take our 10-minute break here. We'll stop here and we'll take our 10 minutes break. And we will come back in 10 minutes. So it's 8 o'clock. So not 8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock my time. Sorry about that. 10 o'clock your time. So let's come back at 10:10. And I will have a timer running on the screen, 10-minute timer. Okay. All right, let's take our break.
Thank you.
If you have any questions, just hold it because I'll have a question time before we start the class. Okay, again. All right, see you in 10 minutes. Okay, in 1 minute, we'll get started back in 1 minute. All right. Any questions so far? Everybody's okay? Okay, I will slow down a little bit so that way it's easier to understand. So we'll be starting from the page 21 of your book as well. Okay, and we read through the standards of practice. This is what Realtor Code of Ethics is asking us to do. Let's continue. agency disclosure and confidential information. So what are some of the must take place before any substantive discussions? You need to let them know what is considered as a confidential information that you're not going to share with anybody else and what you are. In the United States, many states require written explanation of all legal forms of brokerage, even if not offered by the brokerage. Some state in the United States. And I'm not sure what it is in Cambodia, but make sure you follow the law. Even if the law doesn't, you might not have an agency law, you need to let your client know about confidentiality and who you are representing. And also understand what needs to be disclosed in each country, or in the United States, it will be each state. When does all these disclosure happens? What forms are required? In the United States, most of the states, I think all the states in the United States, we have a property disclosure form the seller have to fill out. So they fill out whatever they know about the property. But what you needs to be disclosed is different in each state. But these are things that you need to understand what the law is in Cambodia, how the representation happens. So when you look at NAR's Code of Ethics Standards of Practice 1-13 says, when entering into a buyer-tenant agreement, Realtor must advise potential clients of, number one, the Realtor's company policies regarding cooperations. That means a commission a lot of times, the amount of a compensation to be paid by the client. Is there a fee the buyer is going to pay, or is it all coming from the seller, and etc. The potential for additional or offsetting compensation from other brokers, from the seller or landlord, or from other parties. Any potential for the buyer, tenant, representative to act as a disclosed dual agent. Like I said, are you representing both sides? Are you listing agents, sub-agents? You might be the landlord's agent, etc. And number 5, the possibility the sellers or the seller's representatives may not treat the existence, tenant terms, or the condition of the offer as confidential unless confidentiality is required by law, regulation, or by a confidentiality agreement between the parties. It might be a good idea to talk to your, if you're working for a company, see if there's a confidentiality agreement that's there with your office. It is always good to be in writing, say this is what I'm going to keep secret from the other party is, especially when you are working with both parties, meaning that you're working representing the seller and the buyer at the same time. Confidentiality agreement becomes very, very important. You might not have a buyer agency agreement or law that says that. Maybe the confidentiality agreement might be very important, that you're not going to disclose things the seller or the buyer wish not to be disclosed to the other party. That's why it's very difficult to serve two bosses when you're doing a dual agent and be good at it. I personally have not found how to do a dual agency very effectively and without compromising the services that I'm able to provide if it's only one side. So when you look at type of the relationship, this is on the page 24. Type of representation agreement is an express agreement, can be written, oral, or action. Imply agreement can be created by action, statements, and conduct. Explicit agreement means that you're writing it or you're verbally telling them these are the agreement, this is how I work with you. But how you act or some of the statement that you might make can create an agency relationship or agreement, especially in the United States. So that's why it's very, very better to have a written, some type of agreement. If it's not a buyer agency agreement, then at least a confidentiality agreement might be important if you're serving both parties. Are you in sync with your brokerage? This is on page 25. Do you know what your brokerage is requiring? Your office is requiring. Or do you have a company policy on how you are doing this? If you are the owners of the company. Type of agency relationships. Statement of agency policy. Rationale for the company's policy. Is there this required disclosure that's there? Standard disclosure form. Exclusive buyer representation agreement. Do you have that? Maybe not. How many number of a buyer and clients that you will work with at once? In the market that I have right now, very buyer, a seller market where it's you have to work very hard with a buyer to find a house. Right now, I only chose to work with 4 buyers at a time. And luckily, I only had almost 3 in this market, because right now you have to work with a buyer very, very long time in the United States, because it's hard to find the right house, or you have to beat somebody with a better offer. Most of my buyer clients right now are working between 3 to 6 months to find the right house. We might find the right house, but we make an offer, but our offer doesn't get accepted. Some buyers who I have written more than 10 offered, but still haven't found the house yet. Dual agency options, meaning that you represent seller and a buyer. Do you have a company has a policy? Or designated agency option. Implementation of the dual or designated agent. Does a company have that policy? Interaction with clients and customer. Remember, there's a difference between clients and customer. And is there different behavior? Are you going to behave differently with your clients versus your customer? Client confidentiality or security procedures. How about offer, how you write offer and so forth? Do you have a policy at your company? So there's a sheet says, what's the difference between client and customer? Realtor work for clients and with customers. And this one is showing what's the difference. I mean, United States, what's the difference between clients and customers? And we remember this way. Our duties to clients, we remember as an old car. And responsibility to customer as hard. So duties to client says old car, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care, and diligence. responsibility for customers. And disclosure is a little bit different in each state and each country, what you must disclose as a real estate agent. Honesty, accounting, reasonable skill and care. And also disclosure as well. That's how we look at things in real estate. Old car or hard. Old car for the clients and hard for the customer. And what does that do? Realtor's Code of Ethics. Guide you duties to your clients, and you also communicate your professionalism. And tomorrow I'll make sure that I'll load the sample of the buyer agent agreement. Okay, that's in English, but you could use it, and also the NAR's Realtor's Code of Ethics as well. I'll load it on the chat room tomorrow. Okay.
Hi, Mark.
Go ahead.
Now, can you give us an example between client and customer? What is the difference in the two?
Different?
Yeah.
Client is somebody you have a contract with. You have a contract with.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a contract to sell somebody's house,
yeah,
you know, written contract,
yeah,
that's client.
mm-hmm.
Okay, same as a buyer. In US, we use buyer agency agreement, and that person becomes a client when you have a sign.
Yeah.
If you don't sign it, you're just talking to them, but that those are your customer.
I see.
That's the difference. Customer, you don't have a written agreement or relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Everybody's okay?
Max, I have the question. In reality, in Cambodia, mostly we are at the seller side, not the buyer side.
Right.
Mostly we get the commission fee from the seller. But in United States, I heard that you said sometimes we can stand for both sides, for buyer side and the seller side as well. But in Cambodia, only the seller side.
So buyer has no representation.
Yeah.
So you in Cambodia, you only work for seller.
Yeah, mostly we got commission from the seller.
In United States, commissions paid by the seller as well for the both side.
But pay only one side. For
No,
example,
yeah.
let's say 3%.
Okay.
3%, we got only 3% from the seller.
Yeah, so that's the big difference between Cambodia and US. And that might be changing as well. You know, that's why maybe representing a buyer might be a new way to do business now. And you know, and sometimes in some countries, actually the buyer pays the buyer agent.
Yeah, the question is that in United States, even you are at the buyer side or the seller side, the rate is fixed 3% like this. Or we can negotiate what rate.
In US, you cannot set the rate, but usually between the seller pays both sides, total about 5 to 6%.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on negotiation, right?
Yeah, it depends on negotiation. And sometimes some of my buyer pays their own ways, because when we try to buy, let's say a house that's not on the market, so I'm just representing buyer, and my buyer will pay me the commission.
Yeah. So
because we can't ask from the seller.
4%, 5%, or 3% depend on the negotiation.
Yeah, it's all negotiable in the United States. Yeah, we have no set commission. Like some country, they have a commission rate that's set. So like in Japan, the commission rates are set by the government.
Set in 3% fixed. Yeah.
No, in the United States, no, but Japan, you could only one side could only get 3%, but they could collect from both seller and a buyer. So it's different in each country. So since there's no buyer representation in Cambodia, that might be a new business opportunity. Because right now, there's no protection for the buyer right now in Cambodia. Because if you're only representing seller.
Yeah.
So.
The government already set the commission fee, but right now, for all the agents, I don't think they comply with this fee policy. They try to cheat each other, so it may get lower than the government policy.
Yeah. So is there, say in Cambodia, is there a law? Can you collect a, let's say, consultation fee from your buyer? Is there a law saying no, you can't do that?
The consultation mostly, it depends. Some clients they offer us the fee of consultation, but most of the clients not. Okay.
Yeah. But maybe, that might be the new trend, because to have is, I think definitely, the buyer needs a protection when they're buying a house as well. Right now, buyer has zero protection right now. So that might be something that, new way of doing business in Cambodia as well. Maybe it's a new business opportunity,
Yeah.
Maybe you might not be able to charge high percentage, but you could start. And the representative says, I only represent you as a buyer, not seller. So that's a new business opportunity that I think, if you offer the value, people will pay for the value. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know how it works in Cambodia as well. When he talks about duties to clients, remember we're talking about clients. What is the reasonable care and diligence? Contingency and protective clauses. CMA, comparative market analysis. Home warranty information, maybe there, if there is one. Issues affecting value of the resale. As a buyer agent, if you know that there could be something that could affect the value in the future, if you know about it, then you need to disclose that. Additional charges and cost of ownership. I think we have obligation to teach our buyers what is the cost of ownership, not just the tax, or maybe other things, such as maintaining the property and so forth. If there is a property disclosure from the seller, and that's something that you need to let them know. And you always have to do is you need to instruct the buyer to do their due diligence, meaning that you have to say, buyer, you have to figure out at the end, we'll help you to give you information, but you need to make a decision whether this house is worth what you're willing to pay for. Do you like the area? Do you like the house? Do you like the neighborhood, etc., etc.? And a lot of times in the United States, we recommend doing home inspection. So make sure the house is not falling down. especially if there's no major problem that's going to cost a lot of money. Not cosmetics, you know, changing flooring and things are cosmetics, but hopefully your foundation, your roof, and all those is good. And potentially you as a buyer's agent, you might need to provide the list of other professionals, mortgage brokers, to lawyers, to even for contractor who's able to fix and so forth. And if you want to provide source of the information, don't just create the information. You need to let them know where you got that information from. That's most important, because that way the liability does not lean on you. Liability will be on the source that you gave. And provide other information about possible negative influence that might have for the property. Now, when you're showing the property, but you might say, you know, there's a train that runs every hour, you know, 2 houses from you, and every time train runs, you know, house shakes or things like that. You representing the buyer, that you're gonna let them know that. You know, if you're representing just the seller, you might not say those things that could be a negative. But remember, the bottom line is, as an ABR, you are on buyer's side. You have to look for best interest of your buyer. When you look at page 32, need assessment checklist. This might be something that you could use. This one really spells out difference between client and customer that some of you had questions on. And this helps you determine level of service that's desired. Look at some of the things that's on here. Buyer not represented has that box, right? Buyer not represented. Which one does it fall in? What do they need assistance on? Which property? What happens on viewing property? We'll go through that as we get going on our lessons. Negotiating the purchase and sales agreement. Follow-up. These are the things that we're going to help you go through. So these are some of the things, the list, right? How about responsibility to your customer? And I know that some of you said it, but it's on page 33. That's this kind of list. What's the difference between customer and client? It can be hard to work with customer. They want to be treated like a client. The Realtor Standards Practice and Code of Ethics guide you through the entire process. Hard, we talked about the hard, right? Honestly, counting, reasonable skill, disclosure. When you look at it, this is on the page 34, he talks about how the code of ethics could help you guide through that. He talks about the honesty, he talks about code of ethics, article 1. It says, our obligation to clients is primary. Our obligation to clients is the primary, it's the most important, but we as a realtor have to treat everybody honestly. Accounting means that you have to make sure that monies are kept separately, right? Reasonable skill talks about the Article 11. Article 11 said the service which realtors provide to their clients and customers shall conform to the standards of practice and competence which are reasonably expected in the specific real estate discipline in which they engage, especially residential real estate brokerage, real property management, commercial industrial real estate brokerage, land brokerage, real estate appraisal, real estate counseling, real estate syndications, real estate auctions, and informational real estate, international real estate. So you have to provide the reasonable skill, whatever your specialty is. And if you're not familiar with that, you have an obligation to let them know and says, I'm going to seek for help from somebody. That is a reasonable skill. You should not lie that if you've never done a land transaction, don't pretend like you know how to do a land transaction. Because as you know, land transaction and residential transaction could be very different, or commercial, or even property management. Code of Ethics, Article 2 says, realtors shall avoid exaggeration, misrepresentation, or concealment of a pertinent fact relating to the property or to the transaction. Realtors shall not, however, be obligated to disclose latent defect in the property to advise on the matters outside the scope of their real estate license or the disclosed fact which are confidential under the scope of agency or non-agency relationship as defined by state law. Each state law is different. So let me give you some disclosure examples. In almost all the states in United States, if there is a material defect of the house that you know of, even the seller says don't tell, we have to tell. Let's say your roof leaks. But seller says, no, Mark, don't tell the buyer the roof leaks. In state of Washington, and I think like if it's a roof leak like that, every state in United States, we have to disclose to the buyer. Even though seller says don't disclose it, we have an obligation to disclose. Our law says that. But some of the other things, in state of Washington, it does not matter what type of death, people dying in the house, there is no obligation for the agent to disclose. Whether it's a suicide, natural death, murder, crime, in state of Washington, you have no obligation to disclose if people die in the house. But if you go to different states, like California or Alaska, or several other states, if there was a death in your house, and each state is different on what type of death. Some states says natural death, you don't have to, but if it has happened with a murder or crime, you do have to, or suicide. It's all different in different states. So each state have rule about disclosing death in the house. Does that change value? Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. And I know that a lot of the Asian culture, sometimes we are very superstitious about people dying in the house, and it's not a good luck. Even in the United States, this is a fun one. Some states in the United States, if you know that there's a ghost in the house, you have to disclose it. No, it's very difficult. Most of us don't feel about ghosts and things like that. But you know, when you go to the small town and so forth, like everybody in town knows that house has a ghost or haunted. If you knew about it, then you have to disclose it in some of the states in the United States. Not in Washington, so lucky. But those are things about disclosure, that you have to disclose certain things and not certain type. Other things that you do worry about is realtor trademark in United States. It is federally registered collective membership mark. And for also as well, you are not able to call yourself a realtor unless you're part of the National Association of Realtor. In United States, about 70% of the people who has a license to practice real estate is a realtor. Not everybody is a realtor in the United States either. And of course, not in rest of the world as well. And most of the country, we have a trademark that's registered. You cannot use the word realtor unless you're a member of National Association of Realtor. And of course, you could become a member of NAR, National Association of Realtor, by becoming an IRM, which is International Realtor Member, which is $75 a year. And you have to be a Realtor member in order to be able to use your designation, such as CIPS or ABR, if you choose to get the designation. Everybody could take a class, but it costs extra money, basically, to maintain and have the designation. Unless you have a designation, you are not able to use the word ABR on your business cards and your advertisement. Okay. So key points to review on Module 1. Buyer representatives are selling their expertise to clients. The relationship between clients and agent is legally binding and carries specific duties. Representation agreement can be expressed or implied. Their specific term vary by state. In the United States, by state, and it all depends on what your country as well. For right now, I think you said by law, right now, only the real estate agent represents the seller on the real estate transaction. Realtor must know and abide by the code of ethics and standards of practice that we have. All right, this is end of Module 1. Any question? Everybody's okay? All right, so this is a good, probably the perfect time, a little bit early, but it's a perfect time to take a break. This will be the last break before we finish. So let's take our 10-minute break. And right now, it's about 10:45, 46, so we'll come back about 10:55 or somewhere right around there, okay? And here's my 10-minute clock, so let's take our break. Thank you. Any questions or comments? I know it's the general things that we talked in chapter 1. We'll get into more details as we go from module 2 to 3 and 4 and so forth. But any questions so far or comment? And tomorrow, when we get started, I'm going to share with you a little bit about our real estate market in Seattle area and also in United States as well. Because one of our new statistics just came out from NAR. Okay. Everybody's good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, module 2, buyer counseling session. In this module, we will learn and explain the goals of a buyer counseling session and how to prepare for the initial session. Initial session is most important. Conduct a successful counseling session that educates the buyer, builds a trust, and leads to a signed buyer representation agreement. Understand the importance of the real estate contracts in relation to buyer royalty and compensation. What I'm going to do right now is you give me 1 minute. I'm going to try to load. Give me 1 second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load. Probably this is the best time to do is I'm going to load code of ethics. Okay, I wrote the code of ethics package on there on the chat room if you'd like to download it. So, and module 2, right? We explain the goals of buyer counseling session and how to prepare for the initial session, conduct a successful counseling session to educate, understand the importance of the real estate contracts in relation to buyer loyalty and compensation. You have to build a rapport on the first session so that they could sign a buyer agency agreement or some type of agreement or make a connection that they want to work with you. So basically they become from customer to your client. So we talked about from the customer, right? Turning prospect into client. Buyer counseling session offers chance to make buyer your client. What requires is people skills. You have to know the knowledge of law, regulation, and policies in order to do that. And these are the goals of buyer counseling session to start with. For agents' goal, it is to build a rapport, showcase your service, demonstrate your value, and you learn about buyers' needs and wants. That's the key word that you want to remember is needs and wants. And we'll talk a little bit more about needs and wants. And help buyer form realistic expectation. Decide if you want to work with a buyer. You don't have to work with everybody. You might decide, says, no, I don't think I want to work with them. Because not necessarily they're bad or you're bad. Sometimes you do not click, meaning that sometimes the feeling doesn't match, right? So when your feeling doesn't match in the beginning, it becomes a very difficult relationships, right? It's almost like dating, right? It's very difficult to go out with somebody or to even to marry somebody if you don't get along to start with, right? At the end of the day, work together to find the right home for your buyer. Remember, there's a big difference between home and a house. In a residential real estate, I truly believe we provide home, not just a house. We're not just selling a building or structure, but we're actually providing a home that they feel comfortable living in there physically, mentally, emotionally as well. And these are buyer's goals. These are all listed on page 40, okay? Get acquainted with real estate professional. Get to know them, same thing. Learn service a realtor can provide. Learn about what buyer agent do for them. And describe features of their ideal home. This is type of the home I want. This is again comes into play is your wants and need. Learn about the market conditions. Obtain answers to questions, concerns. Learn about search and building process. Decide if they want to work with agent. Work together to find their right home. Same thing. At the end of the day, work together to find the right home is a key factor when it comes to about that. But even before your counseling session, do you have a brand consistency? Your business plus your brand is you. Your brand must be consistent across all interactions and media. Must be aligned to your value proposition. Present your experience and education and expertise. This is a one thing that I do, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to load one more document, and I want to go there and I want to share with you on the screen as well a little bit. It's part of my brand. Just hang on 1 minute. So what I loaded is my quick resume and my brand and sharing with them why they should work with me. Okay, I'm going to share that on the screen, kind of go over a little, just a little bit. This is a sheet that I created. Hopefully you're able to see now. And kind of give you a little bit about a resume about who I am. And my main market is a little bit outside of the Seattle, south of the Seattle. So I tell them how long, oops, sorry about that. Let's talk about, I live in local. I live in South Puget Sound area for 25 years, and I'm a full-time real estate agent. In the United States, there are people who are doing this for part-time, and I think it's very important that you're full-time. And I have a wide variety of marketing, listing syndicated to over 30 internet sites and so forth. Reputable realtors. It talks about a little bit about what I do. I'm a global coordinator for NAR. I've been NAR's vice president and state president, so forth. In vast training. These are some of the designations that I have. Right? Connected to the community. And I work with international clients. And I also have a supporting team. Members of Puyallup office and Olympia office. All my members are licensed real estate agents, so they can perform same thing that I can. So this is the sheet that I include to my client as a part of introduction on who I am. Sometimes I give this before our first meeting, or maybe sometimes, just depends how it is, I might give this as part of my packet. And a lot of times right now, my initial meeting happened over Zoom. And that became very easy because we don't have to meet anywhere, and we could do it on our comfort from our home, and we could share screen. And with the COVID, we have some regulations on what we could do and we cannot do. Of course, COVID is getting better in the United States. So it's changing, but basically we couldn't meet with a lot of times. So we did over Zoom. So I present these cases just like how I did. Do you have a brand? Do you have a resume sheet that you could present to your client, your experiences? Since I've been doing this 20 plus years, I don't talk about my previous business, but my longer resume does have it. You know, I've been doing international marketing and businesses for a long time as well. So those are things could help them as well. And depends on who I'm working with, I explain about some of the designation that I have. If I'm working with a buyer, I'm going to be talking about my ABR designation. And if I'm working with maybe they're elderly, so I might talk about the senior residential specialist education. And I also have a CRS designation, which is only 2% of the realtors that could have the CRS designation, and that is that designation is provided by not a realtor sister organization called a Residential Real Estate Council, RRC. And that's one of the most prestigious designations that you could have as a residential real estate as well. Maybe that might be some of the courses could be offered in the future in Cambodia as well, but it's a very expensive course as well. But there are some, and you could talk to Yoshi, and Yoshi could help you, or I could help you in other classes that's available for Cambodia as well. All right, that's how I do it. So these are brand consistency checklist. What is the feel of your brand? Is it formal or casual? Is your personality always the same? How do you present yourself? How do you dress? That's your brand. In the United States, in our area, it's very rare that people wear a suit. As a real estate agent, it's very rare that they wear a suit all the time. But I wear a suit all the time when I'm doing even like a Zoom presentation like today, or when I meet with my client. That's my brand. What social media platform do you use? Do you use Facebook? Use a Facebook business page, Twitter, whatever it might be. How about your brokerage website? How about photos? Does your photo look like you if you're using photo? How about your business card? A part of the marketing might be, you might get a comment or recommendation from your client. What is your client saying about you? How about your colleague? Think about that. Brand consistency, present yourself consistently begins the important process of showing your value. It builds a trust. Establish a reliable connection with the buyer. Think about that. So, on page 42, he talks about what is my brand. What I want you to do, you could do this, or on your paper, if you don't have it. Think about it. Just write down things. What is your brand? What does your brand look like? Let's just take a few minutes so you could write it down on the paper. What is the brand? Okay? I'll give you a few minutes just to get started. Yeah, you might be working for some company, franchise, maybe Century 21 or other companies. So company does have a brand. But what are you different? You have many Century 21 agents. So what are you different from other people? And when you have a chance, ask your client, past client, about how they think of you. Ask the client, why did they pick you instead of all other real estate agents? Why? That might be your brand. Also, while you're thinking, I'm going to load one more thing on the chat box as well. I also, on the chat room, I loaded a guide to buying a home on there as well. This is a pamphlet that our company has that I give to all my buyers. This is a generic one the company creates. You could do the PDF printing, or there's a binding version, which is about, in the United States, about $1.50 for the booklet. I just want to share with you what I have. All right. Any question, comments so far? All right, we'll continue.
Hi, Mark.
Go ahead.
I am Mesan from Mekong. You have a guide for buying home, but do you have a guide for buying condo?
No, not specifically. No, I don't do it by property type, but we do it as a buyer type and a seller type as well. And what I'll do is I'll load. Why don't I load the seller one as well? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, even though it's not a seller class, but you could see the selling a home.
Yeah.
But we as a generic one, that we don't differentiate selling or buying a condo. But I mean, I know that there's a difference between buying and selling a condo, so I do talk to them about it when we do that.
Hi, Mark. Yeah. Mark, as you said, the buyer and the agent is really hard to engage each other. And as your experience, you have many years experience, can you raise up the challenge that we try to engage with the buyer successfully, and how to overcome this challenge?
Yeah, so number one, I think the way that you practice real estate in Cambodia makes it harder, because it's the number one, that you are, in a normal situation, a lot of people think, okay, agent represents the seller. But like I said, there's, I think, a business opportunity, like I said, to change that a little bit. Even you start charging small amount, and you only represent the buyer. And work with the buyer to help them through the contract, paperwork, and everything else. And sometimes, because we never say our service is free, even the seller's paying for it, because we don't get paid unless my buyer buys something. So I never, ever, ever say your service is free. That's a very dangerous when you say your service is free, because it's not. Somebody's paying for it. Maybe not the buyer, or sometimes it's the buyer. But your challenging part is this. Like, it doesn't really matter that you have to, and your market, whether it's and your business might be a little bit different than everybody else's as well. Everybody's business is a little bit different. You have to figure out, it's hard to engage in a conversation with a buyer because you don't represent them. So they have a little bit of a shield before they talk to you, especially when you're trying to do almost like a dual agent. Especially when you tell them, I represent the seller and I don't represent you, that you are building the brick wall there. And the buyer is going to say, oh, he does not looking for best interest of me. I know it takes a little bit, but maybe you work as a team.
Yeah.
With somebody, that's the best way. It says, you know what, I represent the seller, but you have a team member who will represent the buyer, that you might give a little bit of money from there.
Yeah.
That might be the best way to start, because I truly believe that by, you know what happens? The good experience the buyer had with you and your team, they're going to refer you more client and they're going to become a seller. People who buy eventually will sell, right? Maybe not as often in Cambodia as like in United States. In US right now, you know, used to be people buy homes about every 5 to 6 years. Now we're getting closer to 10 years because home is getting more expensive.
Yeah.
But, you know, because I started, my first transaction was a buyer when I started 22 years ago.
Yeah.
That buyer has bought and sold, and their family became my clients as well. So I have done over probably 20 transactions from him. So about buyer representation, I think let me think a little bit, and we'll try to give you some more ideas, you know, by end of this class, how we use a buyer agency, you know, ABR in Cambodia, because it's a little bit different than US, okay?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any question, comments? One thing that you're going to learn, these are two big things that you need to understand. Learn about the buyer. Number one, what buyer needs. So what's the difference? Buyer want and buyer need is different. You know, if you have a family of 5 people, maybe you need the house with a room, 3 rooms or 4 rooms, right? Everybody will love to have a swimming pool, right? Those are not needs, those are wants. And need is very different with each family. And also, most important part is how much the buyer can afford. These are the 2 things that you need to know before you start the search or start working with them, right? Everybody has a dream home, but does not necessarily mean that they can afford, they could buy that home. Right? We would love to live in a $1 million mansion. All of us do, right? But doesn't mean that they could afford it. Because your goal is to keep them in reality. It's okay to dream, but when you buy a house, you need to focus. So you need to understand your needs and wants. Some people want big yard, but maybe that's a want. Maybe yard might be a need because you have a big dog. So that might be a need. It all depends on each family is. Sometimes in the United States, people say they need those jetted tub, bath that gives you, like a jacuzzi, because some people says most of the time that's the want, but it could be a need, because I have some client who has a very arthritis and muscle disease, so they want to take long bath with a bubble jet bath. So those are need for them. So you need to understand that. I do not take anybody to go show a house until I have a good idea on these both needs and what they can afford. But there's a big difference. If they're borrowing money, the bank says, yes, you can borrow money up to $1 million, does not mean the buyer wants to spend $1 million. Maybe they only want to spend $700,000, $500,000, who knows? So you need to understand what buyer can afford, but what buyer wants to spend as well. So money part is very important to figure out before you start. So that way you're not wasting time searching for something that's they're never going to buy. So these are the two big need assessment that you have to do. And page 44 through 46, 47, 48, is this the need assessment sheet. I know it's in English, but you probably be able to. It's very, very good to have a standard checklist form when you're working with a buyer so that you get all the necessary information that's needed. But before you get to 44, let's look up 45. Let's look up page 44. Some of the need assessment question you need to ask. Current living situation. It's always good to understand what kind of living situation they have. That way I see if they're upgrading, they want a bigger house, smaller house, maybe they're just renting now and they're buying a first home. So these are the questions that says, how does this compare with your current home? Is this a big changes on your living situation? Motivation is what? Why are you looking at this time? Maybe they're looking for a new home because they have a job change that they're moving, or they're having, new kids. So they need a bigger house, or maybe your mom and dad is going to live with you, or grandparents and so forth. What is their motivation? What is their time frame? How soon? Is it like, oh, when we find the right house, we'll buy it? That doesn't give you a good indication, right? That could be who knows when. I said, I need a house within 2 months now, or whatever. Basically, if you find the right house, property, are you prepared to make a decision now? Maybe the question is, if you find the right house tomorrow, are you willing to move forward? Right? Decision making, where anyone else helps you make the decision. Maybe kids are getting money from the parents, so parents might say, be saying it, or depends on your cultural background. Not the actual buyer, but somebody in a more elderly statement person in the family might have a decision. They have to give you a yes in order for people to buy a house. There's all kinds of different things. So you want to know who makes the decision other than you. Sometimes we have a difficulty because the kids want it, but parents, kids buying it, but parents, even though they might be giving money, or they might not give him money, they want to get involved too much with kids buying a house. Sometimes that could be issue as well. Priorities. It says on page 44, ask if property meets all of your other needs, but does not have, let's say one thing, should I eliminate the property, or would you like me to use? What is your priority? Even within your needs, what are your exactly needs? But maybe, it's very, very difficult to find a perfect house. And I tell my buyers, say, you will never find a perfect house. Why? You could build your own house. It might be perfect when you built it, but it might not a year after or 2 years later. It might not be perfect, but you might be able to make a change by doing a renovation, right? So think about it. These are the main things that you want to check, ask the question. That's page 144. And through 45 to 47, 48, it gives you an example on these assessment sheet. So why don't we stop here for today? I think this is a good place to stop right now. Well, maybe we'll go one more step. Sorry about that. We'll go one more step. Establishing price parameters. We talked about more, right? If the buyer has not been pre-qualified by the lender, now is the time to do it. Like I said, I do not work with somebody who does not have a proof of funding, whether show me that there's a money in the bank or they have gone to the bank, then they could get certain type of loan. Because, especially in the market that we're in right now, you have to have a pre-approval letter to make an offer. So it puts you in a strengthened the negotiation position. And I could talk to the lender and see what kind of criteria they need to do to get the loan. And it saves time and energy. Because they only think that they could buy a house for 400,000 US dollars, but maybe they could buy 500,000. Or they thought they could buy $1 million house, but maybe not. So it's always good to figure out the money part first. All right. We will stop here. Any question, comments?
Hello, Mark.
Go ahead, Sop.
Would you explain us a bit about the tax, how it's taxed in the US,
tax?
Real estate tax and transaction tax?
Okay, so in United States, most of the places, there is no sales tax when you buy.
Okay.
When the property is transferred, actually the seller pays the tax for when the transfer tax, so to speak. Most of the place, but there's some state does have buyer paying the tax. But like, we have a very regular consumer sales tax. Those does not apply. Those not the same rate as that when you buy or sell houses. So like in Washington State, I can only tell you about Washington State. Right now, if the sellers, when the seller sells a property, if it's less than $500,000, it's 1.6%. Then it goes up a little bit as you pay a more expensive house. It goes up a little bit. Buyer does not pay any tax on that. And for the buyer, the homeowner, one of the advantage of owning a home is when you get a loan for federal tax, the country's tax, you're able to deduct interest that you pay on your monthly mortgage as a deduction. You could take a less for the tax purposes. So there is advantage. Especially in the United States, very popular is you get 30-year loan. First 10, 15 years, let's say you're paying $1,000 a month for your loan payment, most likely your interest rate is going to be closer to about $800 is going to be an interest that you're paying, because you pay interest first. Then 15 years basically becomes even. 15 years from there, you start paying more towards your principals. So there are some advantages. Those are the things that you talk about. What is the advantage of home ownership? And it could be a good investment as well, right? But one thing that I tell my clients in United States, different in each country, in United States, when I tell my buyer is, never look your home as a investment property. Look at it as your house. You should look at it as your home. You want to buy a home that is comfortable for all your family. Because some people say, yeah, Mark, I want to buy this house because it's cheap. And I know price is going to go up. But if you don't feel like a home when you buy something and you don't feel comfortable in it, it defeats the purpose. Bad family life. Your wife is going to be mad at you all the time. Or, your husband, either way. So
okay.
That's that. Tax-wise, yeah, there's a couple different taxes, but when you transfer properties, in the United States, most of the time, the seller pays for it, but not the buyer. But some states, the buyer pays something as well. But it's not same as like our sales tax right now is closer to 10% in most of the area in the country. Okay. It's all different in each state or even county. But we don't use, sales tax is not usually apply when you buy in a house. But I know that a lot of other countries, sales tax, regular, consumer sales tax, consumption sales tax applies to when you buy a home. Like in Japan, I know the Japan buyer have to pay the sales tax. And I know that when the sales tax was going up 1%, there was people mad dash to buy a home before it goes up 1%, things like that.
Okay. And what about annual real estate tax? The one
there's a property tax.
Yeah,
and property tax is different in each state. The state charges the property tax, but it's usually between 1 to 3% of the tax assessed value.
Okay.
In my area, is roughly right around 1.2, 1.3%.
1.3%. Okay.
Yeah, and the assessment happens every year. It changes every year.
Okay.
In my area, they do a drive-by. The tax assessor, government people drives by your house every 3 years, but they do a desktop. They look at all the tax and all the market and so forth. They evaluate every year on the tax.
Okay, and I have one last question.
Sure.
From what I heard is most of the transaction, I think all of the transaction will be done in the escrow account. Are there any exception that they don't need to go through escrow account to purchase a property?
So in United States, usually goes through escrow accounts. Sometimes the escrow is the one that third party who does closing, but some of the escrow work is done by the attorney in some of the states.
Okay.
Yeah, usually you want to make sure that there's an escrow that happens. You don't want to go straight through it, because that way either the buyer and the seller is protected.
Okay.
Yeah, in the United States, it's very common that there's a third party, either attorney or the escrow company that does facilitate the closing of the transaction. Not the negotiation, but closing, right? Closing and so forth. Make sure that both party gets money in the house and those things. Gets recorded correctly and so forth. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, it doesn't have to be buyer or anything. Everybody's okay? Okay, with that said, I know a little bit early, and I don't think you're I give you extra 20 minutes before lunchtime. So we'll be back tomorrow, and we will start from page 50 in your book, starting educating the buyer. If you have any questions or anything, just let me know, and you could have it, and you could ask me tomorrow as well. And I also, in the beginning, tomorrow, maybe about 15 minutes, I will do a little bit of the US real estate update for you as well, okay? And also maybe on the next week, somebody could give me an update on Cambodia real estate market. I appreciate it as well. All right, so we'll take time to do that. You guys tell me how the market in Cambodia is. I know not all of you from Phnom Penh, but you know, from different state and different area, might be different too. So if you could share that with me next week, that'd be great. With that said, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have any
much.
questions, I will stick around for a little bit. Other than that, see you tomorrow morning, same time. We'll start with the halfway from chapter 2. Thank you very much, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Good night, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Mark.
Bye. All right, I will log off. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.